let's see. How can we introduce you? You have so many titles, so many things you can do. Uh,
Start with Town Drunk.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Tonight we have the town drunk himself, James Bray. He is not sober. What are you
No,
drinking, by the way?
no, actually, I'm drinking something called Fat Tire.
Liquor?
No, no, it's beer. It's microbrew
Fat
beer.
tire. Why do they call it fat tire?
I
Does it
don't
taste
know.
like a tire?
That's what they call it. It's an ale. It's good. It's
It
tasty.
must be a Vermont thing. Never heard of it.
No,
Fat tire. So
I'm not sure where the brewery is. So
I gotta say to everybody watching this that, man, Jim and Jody, two of my all-time favorite people. I love these two people. They have been so wonderful, so good to me. I mean, I could call up Jim and say, "Hey, Jim, I need a, a cannon from the original Star Trek. Can you make me one?" And Jim's like, "Yeah." I mean, Jim is just a wonderful. I miss you, Jim. I haven't talked to you in so long. I haven't seen you since you were actually here years and years ago. And Jim, I think you're frozen. You've got that frozen smile on your face. He's frozen. I think I gave him so many compliments he can't take it anymore. How do we get you out of this frozen state? I'm open to suggestions. Anyone? Can anyone help? Of course, I guess we could always. Well, I got kicked off. Let's see if Jim will rejoin me here. Jim, my friend, where are you? We'll give it a second. See if he comes back. Only 2 minutes into the podcast, and we're already having technical difficulties. Ah, there's Jim. Let's see if I can add him. I guess the compliments were too great. Could
you
you hear
literally
me?
bumped us off.
Yeah, you were literally frozen on the screen forever. And it was like that episode of Family Guy when Peter was just frozen. And he's frozen again.
No, I'm
He's Oh,
not.
okay. Wow, that was pretty good. You could be a mime. I think it's
I
the
dig.
alcohol, really. You didn't spill it on the computer, did
No, 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 no. Just
you?
all of a
Yeah,
sudden, it
but
just dropped out. It just dropped
yeah,
out.
I that was weird. You were on the screen for like a minute, and then it just went to me.
All right,
That's
let's
weird.
start over. Let's start over.
That's
Let's.
all right. I'm gonna.
I'm drunk.
This
I
is
was just
this is
kidding, but
this is too good to not put in, so we're gonna have to leave that in.
okay.
But Jim, I always brag on you because you just really good at creating things. Was that just something that you just always had as a natural talent before you even started working on things like that?
I don't know. I was always playing with junk and stuff. I mean, look at this. I, I I'm working on a spaceship model that we're going to see in a future episode, and wanted something different for the engine bells on this ship, and Febreze.
Ah,
So I pulled that off the Febreze bottle, and that's going to be one of the engine bells on this crazy ship I'm working on. And the body of the ship is made out of a bicycle helmet. So
does it smell as good as it looks?
I haven't checked, but just
So what age were you, or were you at a little kid when you first started kind of tinkering with things and making
well,
things?
I started catching Star Trek after school. I'd come home in the afternoon, and we live real close to Canada. So what was it? CBC out of Montreal was showing Star Trek, and and I'd
How
catch
old
it
were you?
10,
So
11,
that's
something like
pretty
that.
much when you were exposed to the original series at 10 years
Yeah,
old.
yeah, it was all the original stuff. And we had a little black and white TV at the time. Boy, am I old. And so I never missed it. And when we got a color TV,
Oh
you know,
wow.
wow, the
And
show's
and
even
and
more amazing. The
we
colors
both
and the
we both know Star Trek was made for color TVs.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it
So,
was.
uh, in the original Star Trek, when you first saw it, first let me ask you: do you remember the first episode you saw? I finally made Jim Bray quiet.
It was Man Trap.
Ah,
Man Trap.
so when it came to the original Star Trek, did you see an episode and then just from that point on just loved it, or did it take a while? Saw a few more
The
episodes
one
and you
the
thought,
one that really the one that really got me was For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. That one blew my mind. The idea that a generational ship could just be an asteroid hollowed out with an entire world inside of it just
ah,
took my mind to places I hadn't considered
it's just kind of
seriously.
interesting to see or listen to what episodes drew people to Star Trek, because that's one that I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that really got them into Star Trek. That episode.
Well, I wondered what would it be like to live like that, you know?
Now you have a pretty extensive career with creating things, because if I remember correctly, didn't you tell me that you worked at Disney World? Was it
Well,
or
I worked for I've done work for Disney and for Universal Studios and for a bunch of different museums, but I did it working through companies that specialized in that kind of stuff.
what type of work did you do?
Geez. Well, I at one point I worked building sets for a traveling theater. This is after I moved down to Florida. Up here in Vermont, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for much. So when I had an opportunity to go to Florida, I did, and I worked with a traveling theater for a while and worked in their scenic shop, and then I worked for a company that carved sculptures, and then I worked for a company called Museum Services that I walked into the shop for the interview, and here were two gigantic life-size trees that had faces on them, and they were working on animating the faces so they could, "Good morning, how are you this morning?" and all this kind of stuff, but in Japanese, right?
Wow.
So, I saw all the other stuff they were working on, and I went,
Wow, that really sounds interesting. All of that.
and from there, it just we started building models of theme parks to use for presentations. Here's what we're going to build, and then we would build all the real stuff for theme parks that would get installed. And I didn't go on the road a lot at first, but eventually I started going on these installations too, and that was a lot of fun. You get to travel, you get a nice per diem, um, and I would cheat on my per diem. I'd put the money in my pocket and I'd get a bag of apples, a jar of peanut butter, and a couple loaves of bread, and I'd live on that. That and the free coffee that came with the hotel room, and I'd stuff the money in my pocket as much as I could. I might go out to dinner once or twice, but I lived on apples and peanut butter.
Well, money man.
Yeah, well, I had my mind on my money at the time, but then we started working on. I got with a company on the ground floor that started working on Universal Studios Islands of Adventure and that kind of stuff, and we built just about all of Toon Lagoon
So,
there.
between Disney and Universal Studios, which one would you say you enjoyed the most?
Universal. Years both really, because and
Both.
with different companies too, because it's a pretty tight circle. These scenic companies down there in Florida, you can hop from company to company. You can work at one for a year and you get bored there and you start looking around, or maybe they don't have a lot of projects going on, so you look at another company that does have projects. And it got to the point where I could walk in and go, "Hey, Jim," and I'd throw a bunch of pictures on the table and go, "Oh, that's what you've been working on. When can you start?" So it was a
So,
very relaxed work environment for the most part. I mean, there were times where the whip would get cracked pretty hard, but for the most part, it was a lot of fun.
well,
Plus all the really super cool bragging rights that you get on the back end. So
I know that uh you I don't want to use the word worked, but you volunteered yourself when it came to James Cawley's Star Trek fan series. So how did you get involved? Was that the first
Well,
Star
I
Trek
met you guys.
fan?
I met you guys in Oklahoma first. Remember,
Oh,
remember,
okay. See, I thought you met
remember.
Cawley
John
first.
Hughes got a hold of the old Exeter set, and they were talking about it on the Trek BBS, I think, and I stumbled over that, and they started posting pictures of it, and being a set guy myself, I began writing back to all those guys, saying, it's not as bad as I mean. Those sets were in really bad shape when they got them. They've been sitting in a pole barn somewhere in Texas for years, with the rain getting
Yeah.
on them, and they're made out of that MDF stuff. That if it gets wet, it swells up and turns all punky and cardboardy.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were portions of the communication station you just put your fist right through it without even trying. It was just
To
sawdust.
see, I never got to see it in that state. When I saw it, well, I remember when John Hughes first got the set. It was housed in a airport hangar.
El Reno.
Yeah. See, I
Yeah,
never saw it there. When I saw it, it was actually in Oklahoma City in the
we're in the last
warehouse.
hangar on the right. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Um,
so that I
so
always,
anyway, I said, guys, can I come out and help fix this? I think I can help you get the ball rolling on this. And they're like, really? Yeah, come on out. So I flew out and I met everybody, and we did a bunch of little videos, this old Starship, and I started pointing out where things were bad and how we plan to fix it. And then we did a series of little videos of the process of getting it done. And then there was a day we all decided, you know what? This is a 3/4 bridge. Let's go all the way around. Let's just make the whole thing. And so they ran out and got more materials, and we started building that. And that was part of the video process. And we got to a point where, guys, I can't stay here forever. I got to fly back. So I got them dialed in to a point where they understood the process of redoing all of these sets. And then I cut them loose. It wasn't too long after that Scott Johnson and those guys got involved, and you were always kind of there back and forth, I think.
yeah, when they moved it to
You,
Oklahoma
I met you
City.
on my second trip out, which was a year after that.
Yeah.
Um,
What year was that? Was that 2013?
13, 14, something like that.
So
You were doing video reviews at the time.
yeah, and then I kind of did a documentary kind of series on Ajax, but I
Yeah.
always assumed that you worked on Phase Two before you worked on the
No,
sets in
what
Oklahoma.
well, no, what happened there was we were getting ready to do Ajax, and I said, "Well, look, let me poke around, see if I can get you the right fabrics." I didn't know anything from Adam's elbow at this point, and so I just started poking around, and this James Cawley guy reaches out and he says, "If you need fabric, I've got a ton of fabric, and if you're in Vermont, you're only a couple hours away from me. Come and get some." So I rolled down there and I said, "Well, I'll make a trade with you." At the time, I was casting off these Gorn masks from a sculpture I had done because the first Ajax episode was going to be super Gorn centric. So I sculpted up a Gorn and made a mold and cast a whole bunch of Gorn masks for our Gorn crew. And so I made an extra one and I brought it to James and I traded him the mask, and he handed me rolls of fabric. I
You
mean,
know,
and I knew it was the real deal because on the roll of gold fabric, the sticker on the end of the roll said Kirk Gold.
I
And I went,
remember,
oh
I
my
rem,
God.
I remember that picture of Cawley and you with like
And I'm
both of you
going,
holding a ton of fabric. I'm assuming that's when he
yeah, and
gave
I'm
you the
hugging the
fabric that
fabric and
day.
I'm going, ah!
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could have been a girl. You look so happy holding that fabric.
Yeah, it
But you
was like
know,
holding a woman. It really
yeah,
was.
it's kind of magic, when you actually have something that was used in the original series or something you love so much. Even that fabric is just
Well, that
so.
sticker blew
I
my
mean,
Kirk
yeah.
Gold. It was the real stuff. Blew
So
my mind.
after, was that the first time you actually met Cawley when you went and
Yeah.
swapped out the? So
Yeah.
how did you get involved in helping him more
Well,
with his series?
he starts giving me the tour around the place. It's kind of funny, and I think I accidentally hurt his feelings because he takes me around and he brings me around to the turbo lift and he has, all right, stand still. And suddenly I can see through the crack in the doors. I can see the lights come on the bridge, and it's like, oh, he's going to do a big reveal. That's cool. And the doors slide open, and it looked just like the one we had. And so I walked out and I looked around and I went, yep,
It's a bridge.
yep, yep. That
So
looks almost exactly like the one we have in Florida. I
now
mean, in Oklahoma.
I
And
thought
and he went,
I
oh,
I thought his was up first though
yeah.
before
Actually,
because he had shot films already, hadn't he?
he had, but I think it was Exeter that was the first one to have an
Yeah,
almost full bridge set.
Exeter was actually the first fan film that I think I ever saw.
Yeah.
But uh, when it comes to Cawley and you doing work up there, the only thing I remember that you actually did was I think it was the one where you built the Guardian Forever.
Oh yeah, that was pretty that
Yeah,
was pretty recent. Yeah.
yeah, that was really nice. But I don't remember what episode. Oh, was that Time Sifter?
Mine sifter.
Mind Sifter, Mind
Mine
Sifter.
sifter. Yeah.
So other than that, I mean, you built much more than that for some of the episodes, didn't you?
Well, well. So after the tour,
And you
he
did
got called
makeup.
away, and Jody was with me, and we wandered around the sets a little bit. And we were walking by the makeup room, and I look in and I see James in there, and he's talking to Bill Lutz, who I hadn't met yet, but now he's my editor, okay,
Yep.
and he's in our show Challenger. He plays one of our
Narf,
aliens,
Narf.
Narf, and
That's a shout out there,
yes,
Mouse.
it is not Narf to Bill, um, and James is holding a Klingon prosthetic, and they're talking and they seem troubled, and so I tapped on the glass. James looks up and he goes, come on in. So I come in, and Bill is going, well, he didn't show up, and I don't know how to put these things on. Don't ask me. I don't know what to do. And Jody, of course, she pipes up right away. She goes, Jim knows how. And they both go, really? And I went, yeah, I do. And Jody goes, get out of his way. And so,
You do a
so they
great Jody
sat a guy.
impression.
So they sat down Brian Tubbs, and I did up Brian Tubbs, and then they brought in Wayne Johnson, and they sat him down, and I did him as a scary looking Klingon. They were doing some reshoots for Katoomba, I think, and so I dressed these guys up in the makeup, and what a thrill, because I'd never had an opportunity to work with such nice prosthetics before.
Now, in Katoomba, the Klingons were all the movie era Klingons, weren't they?
Not all of them. It was a mixture.
Did you do both?
Yeah, I did. I actually got to do Bill Lutz as the greasy Klingon. That's what I call the original Klingons is the greasy Klingons, because they all look like they've been dipped in Vaseline. It's awful. So
Ah,
so I got to do a little of both, and then they were like, "Can you come back tomorrow?" So I said, "All right, I'll come back tomorrow." So I helped them out, and then when they had a big shoot the following summer, they found out that their usual makeup lead couldn't come in until a couple days late. And so they said, can you come in and run the department for a couple of days? And I was like, yeah, sure, not a problem. So I went in and I run, and so the first thing I got to work on was Spock.
who was it?
And
Was it
the
the
holiest
last?
thing.
Okay,
This
so that was the
this
last actor that played Spock. I can't think of his name. What was his name?
it was
Um,
it was
I mean, he played alongside Brian Gross. But
yeah.
I cannot remember his name.
Oh my God, I'm senile.
He also played.
Brandon Stacy.
Yes,
Sorry, Brandon.
he also played uh, J.J. Abrams. The Spock in those films. He played his double, didn't he?
He was his stand-in, I think.
Yeah, his
Yeah, he was
stand-in.
his stand-in because they were a lot alike. Um, so I got to do his makeup, but it was a fun little story here because of a reaction I got from something I had to do. Um, so they had David Gerald in, and he was kind of playing showrunner and script supervisor on this, And I mean, yeah, I've heard of David Gerald and all of
Yeah,
that.
I kind of
And
think of Tribbles when I heard that name,
I
but I'm not
know,
for
right? Yeah,
sure.
or
Was it
Sleestack.
Tribbles?
Yeah,
Yeah, or
or
maybe a
Sleestack.
Glommer. Yeah, a Glommer or
Yeah, the
something like that.
Glommer. Um,
Did he
so
create that?
yeah, he did.
Yep.
But Brandon was a little miffed that he kept changing the script and changing the script and changing the script. And Brandon was like, "There's got to be a time where you've got to stop doing this because it's interrupting my process and my ability to memorize this and wrap my head around what you're giving me to portray." And he was frustrated, and David Gerald was kind of crapping on him about that. And he was going, "Well, if you're a gunslinger, you don't bring a knife," and you know, and he was coming into my makeup room and just needling Brandon, and I could see that it was upsetting Brandon and kind of taking the zen out of my little work area. And so I went to one of the other guys and I said, what do I do? I mean, it's David Gerald, you know. And they went, tell him, just go tell him, stay out of my makeup room and leave the actors alone. And so I did. So I found David Gerald and I said, David, a minute, please. I said, look, we're trying to keep things very low key,
Positive.
quiet, and zen in the makeup room. And when you come in and Hector Brandon like you're doing, it kind of throws everything off. He gets upset. We get uncomfortable. We've got to calm him down. It prolongs the whole process. I said, I'd appreciate it if you just stay out. If you got to talk to Brandon, catch him out of the makeup room, but please don't come back in there because it's just throwing everything off right now. And I'm trying to learn how to run this department too, and it's throwing me off. And I said, let's everybody, help each other look good. And he went, fair enough. And that was it. So I go back in, and of course I picked my phone up, and man, what a day! I've already had to chase David Gerald out of my makeup room, and I post that, and one of my friends comes on and all in caps, the David Gerald. You had to throw David Gerald out of your makeup room. Oh my God! He's just a guy, man. He puts his pants on one leg at a time, like everyone else. I mean, that's how I've always treated celebrities. I don't.
You
I got to meet
meanie.
Richard Hatch, and he's a hell of a nice guy, and he's just a
Yeah,
dude. He's a dude. He was a dude like anybody else.
Richard Hatch, rest in peace.
Yeah, yeah. He was a,
Wow,
he was a really nice, really cool guy.
talented guy. When I think of Richard Hatch, I think of Apollo. He was just great on that
Oh yeah.
show.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Oh
man.
yeah.
Um, so you worked on pretty much the final episodes that Phase Two did. I think the
Yeah, I
last one
did.
that the last
Yeah.
one they did was with Richard Hatch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never been released yet. I've never seen that one before.
I got to be there for a couple of days, but I wasn't needed, so I didn't hang around. You
Did you
don't
do any
want to
work on that
on a
episode?
working set like that. You don't want to get underfoot. I I helped their makeup lead come up with a color that suited Mr. Hatch well. Um,
Did
we
you
had
have
a
any?
we had a big palette of different skin tones, and we wanted to find something where we wouldn't have to go down on his neck and get it all over his costume. We wanted to fade it out on the jawline, but not. You've seen women, they put on makeup and it's like their face is brown and their neck is pale. You know, you've seen that. And so we didn't want to do that to him. We wanted to compliment him. So we started mixing a couple colors together. And I said, I think if you mix this with this, and the guy was like, yeah, okay. And then go away. So okay. So
the
I got out of
the
there.
So was that makeup artist personally brought on by Richard Hatch, or was that just
No,
one they
no,
called it?
no. It was a guy that's always been their makeup lead. And I didn't. And I was like, I'm not here to step on toes. If I'm not needed, I'll go home.
Did you have any conversations with Richard Hatch during that shoot?
Not really pleasantries. That was it. We shared a few pleasantries.
From
How
what
are
I've
you?
heard,
Good,
he was
good.
really a down to earth type of
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. That's what I saw him with him working with everybody. I mean, he was just a swell dude.
So let's switch starships and talk about Ajax. Now, how did you get involved with Ajax, or how far had it gotten into
Well, that
production before you got
well
involved, or
that
was
was that was
Ajax your idea?
no no
Or
no. It was John Hughes's idea, and
okay,
and his thing had always been that it was going to be a deal breaker that he had to have JM Colt, and
That's
I said,
right,
well,
because John's a big fan of
of
the
Colt,
Cage. Yeah, the
yeah,
Cage. He loves the Cage era.
he loves the Cage, yeah. So
Yeah.
so he and I sat down and talked about it. He goes, I don't know what to do with her, and I said, well, how many years past when we saw her in the Cage is this? And she wouldn't always be on the Enterprise, would she? Maybe she got a promotion, went to another ship, she's worked her way up. I said, hell, make her a commander, put her in charge of security. Make her a badass, a nice, strong female role. Give her things that you would ordinarily give to a man to do. I said, if I remember correctly, she was pretty tough in the Cage. I mean, when
Yep.
when Vina got a little mouthy, she stepped up. So so he ran with that, and I said, I just happen to know a lady who favors her, if her as an older woman, um, and not just a young kid like she was in the Cage, and I happen to be married to her, so and she can act, and so I sent some pictures to John, and he went, great, googly moogly. Look at that. She sure does look a lot like her.
So when you
Does she want to
recommended
do it? I said, yeah. So we
when you
set it up.
recommended Jodie for that role, how far in the story had they gotten? Did they have a story at that time?
They had pretty much a script. They had pretty
So
much a script, and it was an
so
interesting script.
instead of Colt, or did they always have Colt in that script, that character, or did they change it once you? Uh,
No, like I said with John, that was a deal breaker. It had to be a story that had Colt in it somewhere,
uh,
and she had to be more than just an ancillary character. She had to figure prominently in the plot, which she did, because she actually, in the script, she gets in a fight with a female Gorn in the transporter room, and it's all hair, teeth, and eyeballs, man. It's a tough fight.
you know, Ajax. God, I almost feel like in terms of fan films, that was one of the biggest missed opportunities
Agreed.
because we really had a good story with that.
We had a good
We
script. We
we
we had a
really
great science officer.
well, what can I say? No, but we put so much work into that. We did rehearsals, we did fittings, we did everything except film it. I mean,
We
we
shot
spent a lot of yeah,
two scenes. That's all we got to shoot.
we spent a lot of time and money on that, and it never came to be. And to this day, I regret that we never finished that because I think it would have been really
It would have
good.
been a lot of fun. I think we would have gotten in trouble for because the script, it was a good script, but it kind of plagiarized one of the Trek comic books.
Well, it was a fan film, so I
Well,
really
yeah,
think.
but it plagiarized someone else's work a little bit, and
See,
that worried me. But it took what the
well,
writer
see,
did was he took that story from a comic book, and he kicked it up several levels, which was a good thing to do. And
well, maybe
we were gonna,
maybe
we
we
were
could
going to
have put.
bring a lot more action to the story and a lot more drama to the story, and we were going to. He kicked up the intrigue a little bit because someone wasn't being honest about something, and then there was something that was going to happen with the planet, and it was a Gorn planet that was covered in all these artifacts and ruins, and it was a burial planet for the Gorn, and it had a tectonic uh, uh, problem where every 100 years the whole planet would kind of break up a little bit, and all this fire and lava would come to the surface and completely scour the planet, and then it would all come down, calm down, come back together, and then within that 100 years, life would grow again, and things would come back, and it'd be a beautiful, verdant planet again. And then in that next 100 years, then it would all catch fire again. So what they would do is they'd bring their dead there, and it was like an incineration planet for the Gorn. And they would all the Gorn, all of them would orbit the planet and watch this great change happen on the planet. And it was a spiritual thing for the Gorn, and
Well,
this archaeologist was there, didn't realize what was really going on where he kind of had it figured out, but he didn't want to tell anyone because he wanted to leave the planet with some of this cool stuff. Well, these were all burial idols and stuff, and he was defiling a grave basically, and the Gorn weren't too keen on that, and so this Captain Boone, had to go down and do the burial ritual to make it right. He had to place everything out, and he had to set fire to this and set fire to that, and light a candle and stand on one foot, and all of this stuff that was required of the ritual. And then and he gets out just by the skin of his teeth as the heat wave is coming at him. There's always that beam out at the very last second. Oh, he's done for now. And so there was a lot of that, and the Gorn try to invade the Ajax, and that's where Colt gets in a fight with a female Gorn officer, and it was a lot of crazy stuff happens in this script.
It,
It was
you
quite
know,
good.
but it sounds so Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it
another
was.
thing is you mentioned part of the story was inspired by someone else's work. I had never heard that until just now. But I
Well, because John had showed me the comic book that it came from, but the story in the comic book was much abbreviated from what was in the script. It was actually. Uh, they go down to check on this scientist, and they find that he's disturbing graves, and the Gorn and some Gorn show up, and there's a bit of a firefight until they explain, oh, it was all a mistake, and well, get off our planet and don't bother us again. And that was pretty much the story.
so
But they added all these extra layers of cool stuff to the story that made it more Star Trekky.
the interesting thing about Ajax, and it's kind of puzzling, is that uh, we stopped working on it, and then we went on to something called Star Trek. What was the other thing? It was another film put out by the same. It was going to be put out by the same people,
Yeah, I
a-
forget.
and I don't remember the name of it now. But I'm wondering, why didn't we continue with Ajax instead of just jumping to something different? I mean, I know that you. It was a lot of
Well,
frustration for you. I know that you finally just said, "I'm done. This
well, it
isn't
was just
working. We're
I
not."
couldn't keep going back and forth to Oklahoma. It was getting expensive, and it was like, I'll come back when we have a plan, a real plan, a shooting schedule.
Do you remember why?
And they just couldn't seem to. I don't know. They'd never done anything like this before, and they didn't realize just how complicated it really was. They they were lacking some equipment. It could have been done. I could have worked with what we had for the most part, but it was the travel back and forth, and I said we're going to need to raise funds or something so that I can keep. This is really hit me in the wallet, and
Well, you think we set the sites were set too big,
I
and
don't have a lot of money. I just
you
don't. People think if
you
you're going to do this, then you must have a lot of money. I
no
wish, because if I fell in
no.
a pile of money, I'd just open a studio and start making my my stuff. So
So I mean, if you really think about Ajax, it was a really big story,
it was.
and I don't know. I think maybe you think maybe if our sites were set a little bit smaller, that was something that maybe nobody sat back and thought at the time, is this really doable, or are we really, you
The,
know,
the the thing is, Michael, it was doable. It's just people got overwhelmed too easily. They weren't ready for the amount of work involved. And I'm not saying that people are lazy. They just they didn't realize what they got themselves into.
yeah. Now that you say that, I do
And
remember
it's
a lot of the.
unfortunate. I mean, there was a lot of heart there. There was a lot of heart there, and everyone was gung ho to do it. But when the rubber hit the road, our tire went flat.
Yeah,
What are you gonna
and
do?
and that reminds me, back in those days, we had some good people, but a lot of times, you have a
And they're
rehearsal
still
and they
good,
don't
and they're
show.
and they're all still good people. That's the thing, and a bunch of them were able to move on and work with you on Valiant. So,
Yeah,
and I was much pleased to see that happen. That you were able to pull these people into your project and give them something that would have some meaning. I mean,
and
your doctor was our crooked scientist, so And he was great too.
And the thing with Valiant is we only had one bridge set, so we didn't have money to travel to Cawley's to film anymore.
Right.
So I had to do a story that I knew we could do.
Well,
And
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 honestly,
honestly, looking back at Ajax, I just don't see how we would have pulled all those resources and all those
well,
sets we would have needed and all that to shoot that.
yeah, well, that was the thing at first was as Jody and I spent time with James down in Ticonderoga. Well, he wasn't in Ticonderoga at the time; he was in Port Henry. They were working out of a little an old abandoned car dealership, and they were using that building. They were
Mm,
using the big garage part of it for the studio, and um, and Jody and I noticed that everybody working for James would go, "You're good at this, and that's what you're going to do," and he wouldn't let it. He get them where they were functioning well, and he didn't let them stretch at all. And there were some people you talk to who would say, "I'd like to try doing this. I'd like this is fun, but I'd really like to direct." You hear everyone say that, but everyone wanted to try other things, and Jody and I were simultaneously we were sitting having a burger at the Wagon Wheel in Ticonderoga, and that place is gone now. Thank you,
I rem-
COVID.
I
The
remember
the
I remember
burgers were
Scott
good.
mentioning that place. That was one
Um,
of the places that he said that you all would go
well,
eat.
they shot a bunch of Katoomba in there. The whole bar scene, the Klingon bar scene, was shot in the Wagon Wheel. Um, but so we were kind of whining to James about how, man, this Ajax thing just isn't working out. It's kind of hit a wall, and we can't seem to figure out how to. He goes, well, so make your own thing. And I said, well, that would be nice, but how are we going? He goes, use my sets. And and we were like,
Wow.
and I said, don't toy with my emotions, James. Don't play with me like that. You better be serious because I will take you up on it. And he was like, no, I'm serious. Do it. And so we a bunch of us sat down and started talking and thinking about how do we want to what kind of stories do we want to tell, and we realized, you know, this is an opportunity to bring some of James's people into our project and let them do the things that they hadn't been allowed to do for James. And what we were hoping to do is kind of not make it a school, but more of an opportunity for people to try to work in other areas of production and learn that aspect and bring that home to James and go, now you've got people that also know how to redress a set. You've got people that know how to paint that didn't know how to paint before. You've got people that know how to handle or create props that didn't know before. You've got people that know how to break down a script and how to get that kind of stuff done. You've got someone who's been sitting with your editor and observing how to edit and learning that, you know. So we found Brian Koval sitting on the stairs to the transporter room in the old place because it was on another level at the time. And he's just sitting there, and we were like, Brian, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm just waiting for something to do. And so we got talking to Brian, and turns out he writes, and he writes well, and that's where Sweepers came from. That's Brian Koval's piece. And it was so good. I said, let's do this one first, because this sets the tone for the universe that we want to create a somewhat more lived in Star Trek universe. So we started working with James, and he was gung ho, but some of his people seemed to feel like what James is doing should be enough, and what you're trying to do is you're horning in, you're stealing the limelight, and we were doing nothing of the kind. But when you've got people that have developed a sycophancy, they don't even realize they've done it. They worshipped James so much, and they loved so much what he was doing that they became very protective of it, and they had gone through someone else coming in and trying to yank the rug out from under him. And so I Jody and I were immediately a threat, which we weren't, but you couldn't convince him otherwise. And so that all of that ended up falling apart. And then when the whole Axonar debacle happened, we were a week away from flying out to you guys in Oklahoma to shoot Challenger
Now
when
you
when the
you did
guidelines dropped, and we went, we're dead, we can't do it now.
you did Challenger. Now Okay, now was it Star Trek Anthology,
Yes,
and
because what we
then,
realized
or
we
was
could
it
do is we
Challenge?
could.
Was Challenger an episode of Anthology?
Well, yeah, yeah, it was.
Okay.
We were thinking we'd have three tentpole shows, and then we do little standalones in between those. But we'd always have a home to go back to, kind of. So if we wanted to have some weird, way out there on the fringes kind of adventure, we'd go with Sweepers. And if we wanted something that really felt like Star Trek, you know, in the most basic way, we'd go with Challenger. And if we wanted to do something that was more action adventure, but family oriented, we'd go with Mother. And Mother was supposed to be the story of a woman that had worked with Dr. Daystrom, and she married a guy that ran his own little shipping company, and she decided to continue Daystrom's work, knowing that, well, it's unfortunate that he was crazy, but he had a really good idea, and had he not been mentally disturbed, it probably would have worked just fine. So she begins to finish his work aboard this shipping vessel, and then one day they're attacked by pirates, and she's mortally wounded, and she has the family run her up to her lab where she downloads her mind into the ship. So now the ship is a character. The ship
Mother.
is mom. The ship is mother.
That sounds really good.
So
But that
when
is a
everything when
story.
everything fell apart, we started looking at our stories, going, "Well, now what are we going to do?"
Wait,
So
now
it
I
was,
need I need to know what came first, because first you were gonna do Challenger, right? Or
yeah.
was that okay?
Well, we
Challenger.
were going to do Challenger first.
Now I remember seeing footage from Challenger. I don't know where
Yep.
I saw it. Maybe you just showed it to me, but I
Well,
have not. I've not
you
seen that footage anywhere else.
you aired a chunk of it. What, last week?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I remember footage of Jody in the captain's quarters. It
Yep.
seems.
Talking to the doctor. Yep.
I have not seen that foot. Where
and,
is that
and talking
footage?
to her XO. That's all filed away somewhere.
I would love to post that. You know, I mean, that was good stuff. And then
Um,
I remember Jody on in character on the bridge. I remember seeing footage of that.
well, I'll be as
And I,
gentle as I can here, but a couple of people that are in those pieces, I had to fire because there was a lot of, like I said, there was all of this sycophancy with James's people, and they didn't like what I was doing. There was a lot of, going around behind me talking to James, telling tales at his school, and I said, I can't, I've got to have control of information here, and it's all getting, and they were upsetting James, which
okay,
that's the
so
last thing. You don't want to upset James. You just don't. I mean, he's a nice guy, and they were telling him things that weren't so, and it was upsetting him. And then I'd have to do damage control. It was nutty. It was nutty.
so
And so I said,
the,
"You're done. You're done. You're done. Get out of here." And they said, "Well, don't you dare use any of our footage." And I was like, "Fine." So it's been dumped. It's gone.
the obvious solution to this seems to me would have been you going to James and saying, "Hey, James, you said it would be okay for me to make
You would
this
think.
film.
You would
Is
think
there any way we can get together and have a meeting just to let people know that
we
they don't
we
have to
did
feel
that.
threatened?" Or
We did that, but James is such a nice guy and he despises confrontation. He doesn't. He he wants to keep everybody happy, and what happens is no one's happy when you try to do that. And so what I ended up doing was just pulling away. I just said, you know what, God bless
not
you.
worth it.
I can't. I just can't. I'm just gonna go
So
my way. You go your way. Hey, knock 'em dead, pal. Have a blast. All you guys, have a splendid time. And so we went our way. And so after Axonar ruined everything, and everyone's pretty clear on that, we started looking at our stories and said, well, if we pull all the Star Trek out, do we still have a story? And what are we going to do about Mother? I mean, the whole Daystrom angle is
that would
everything
be a
hinges
story.
everything hinged on that.
That would be easy to adapt into Sweepers, though. That
We
episode.
what we ended up doing was just say that Donna was working on an AI project. That's all. Just We just said it's an AI project she's working on, and so everything that we had shot for Challenger, we just reshot it. We just
You know,
reshot it, new sets, new costumes, new everything, new props, the works, and we
You know,
rebuilt a universe that's more industrial. The corporations run the government. Sound familiar? And and there's a lot of world building, a lot of world building.
you
Um,
know, it's a damn shame that that footage that you shot for Challenger can never be seen, man. God, that's such a waste. I mean, the episode didn't get finished, but it would be nice to see what you shot, and to at
well,
least be able to share that. But
it looked great. I mean, it looked
yeah,
legit. It
I
really.
don't know where I saw it from, but sometimes you would just send me a link to say,
Yeah,
hey,
I know.
this is
I would drop things. What do you think of this?
that's that's probably where I saw it. But
Yeah.
man, I it been so long ago. I was sitting here when I posted the last part that you did. I was just thinking, man, it seems like there was more of this, but I don't quite remember. And well, I guess there was, but you
Well, yeah,
know,
we had a couple days where we were able to use James's sets pretty much uninterrupted, and we got a bunch of stuff shot out, um, but not near enough, to make anything with.
and
Uh,
it's funny because usually when you shot, some of the time Scott would go up there to help,
yeah,
and I would hear from him about the drama in fan films. What is that something new? But yeah, he would tell me like when you made that trailer for Challenger and you had some footage from the cage, or I think it was the cage of the original Colt in the trailer. And I remember
yeah, we
hell to
almost got
pay
in
for
trouble
that.
with that. Yeah, that almost got us in trouble.
And I Scott would tell me about the shoots when he would get back, because usually back in those days he would go up there for every shoot.
Yeah.
And there would be so much drama in between the shoots of people unhappy or people complaining, and I would say to Scott, why do you spend your money going up there and nobody's ever happy? It just seems like, I mean, maybe I'm hearing one side of it, but it just seems like there was just a
No,
lot
no,
of stress
it
and
no.
frustration.
There was a lot of contention. There was a lot of suspicion, a lot of drama, a lot of soap opera kind of
That's
stuff. That
that it's not fun when that happens.
no, no. When you get that many folks that just feel this need to just needlessly create drama. I mean, and I've got a hard and fast rule with our company now is if you start creating drama, I will shove you in the airlock and hit the button.
I mean,
I
if
will
if
hit
you
that
really think
button.
if you really think about it, Jim, for the most part, we're putting personal funds into this,
Hmm.
and you know, let's just have fun and make
Right.
Star Trek or whatever we want to make.
Yeah.
The drama, real life. There's enough
Stuff
drama
your
in real
ego.
life.
Yeah. Yeah. Stuff
Yeah,
your ego. If you come on being a diva or filled with ego, you're not welcome. You're just not.
and for a medium where everybody's volunteering their time and nobody's making any money, it's
Right.
amazing that you do have situations where some people come into there and they just have these big heads,
Yeah.
and it's just like, wow,
Oh, and I
really?
love sticking a pin in those people too. I really do. Watch them go all around the room, and then I go, "Are you done? Good. Now chill out."
Because you just flew out of the window.
Yeah, gone.
so so after the guidelines hit and you couldn't do Challenger or Anthology, you moved on to the Outer Rim, where you pretty much made your own universe
Yep.
without the restrictions of anybody coming in and saying, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. And let me say, that was a beautiful decision you made. And I mean, I really envy that you don't have restrictions that you have to worry about because you created your own universe. And I think that fan films, basically could be a stepping point for someone to create something different.
Yeah.
And
Well, we're
you
not a
you did
fan
that.
film anymore. We're just a
Yeah,
film
you
now.
did that. You're an independent film now.
We're a broken shoestring
Uh
budget indie film, is what we are.
how long did it take you to come up with the story of Sweepers, or
So
Brian? How long did
that was all Brian Koval, and he brought that to us right away when he said, I like to write, and I've got some scripts I've handed James, but he just doesn't seem interested. And I was like, well, let me see him. And we so he handed me Sweepers, and I read it, and I said, This is the most Star Trek thing I've ever read in my life. This is great.
Well,
Why?
there's an obvious Star Trek influence even in the ship. Uh,
Well, you know, we allude to the Prime Directive without saying Prime Directive. We have all of that kind of stuff in it, and you know the weird ethereal creature that shows up to resolve the issue, and
I mean,
so
this
it has
this
all
could
those
easily
little earmarks that you'd expect to find.
this,
Yeah,
this could easily take place in a Star Trek universe.
yeah, yeah.
But once it's my understanding that the sets you built at a was it a place where actual plays were done?
An opera house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
the Enosburg Opera House, and I mean, I started doing theater out of high school. I started doing theater there, and I've been their makeup and set guy like forever.
so was
Uh,
it pretty easy to convince them to allow you to use the space to build the sets?
it didn't hurt too bad.
Do you
I
still
had to
have those?
I had to make a few promises that I had to keep, but that was not a big deal. So
Do you still have that set standing at the Opera House?
no, no, it's made to come apart, and it's all in storage in the attic.
Cool.
And all of the flats that every flat that we make, I put in their inventory to use for shows. So that's the trade off is whatever set pieces I build that they can use, they use.
How long did it take you to build the ship?
About a month. About a month. I mean,
Did you have it already laid out in your mind how you wanted it to be pieced together, or did it kind of
well,
go as
first
you went?
I built a little cardboard model of it, and we looked at that, and we so we could stick our phone down in it, you know, and do camera moves inside the model and
Uh,
go, oh yeah, that's how, yeah, this is going to look really cool. We wanted to get kind of this submarine kind of feeling. I think we pulled it off. So that's why we made just this narrow little corridor that runs the length of the ship with the flight deck up in front, and then redress that corridor to be another part of the ship for other scenes, like the conference scene in Act One. Um, is the same room as the scanning room, just everything's flipped around the other way. Some things are moved around, redressed, and
that's amazing. What
it's supposed to be the next compartment aft from the scanning room with an airlock in between.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do creatively when you don't have a lot of funds. You come up with some of the best movies have been low budget films where they had to
I think
really.
so. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think humans really are creative when you have to figure out how to stretch your money.
Well, there's a certain level of desperation that causes creativity to flourish. I think, and that's where we were at the time. Now, when we did Challenger, we used a lot of those same flats over again, repainted some of the same sliding doors and wall greeblies and stuff like that. I had to create a whole new set of control panels and stuff because the 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 look we were going for on the Audrey was kind of cobbled together. This was a scrapper ship that was built out of salvage parts from a dozen other ships. She's held together with spit and baling wire, and and we wanted it to have that look. So we wanted a mixture of components on the control panels. Some were touchscreen, and some were switches, actual switches, and some were those little jewel buttons like you find on the bridge of the Enterprise. It was this crazy mixture of knobs and switches and buttons and lights. Um,
Well, it gave the ship a personality.
I think it did,
And one
but
of the
on the
things too that really kind of stood out to me is just, it had this lived in feeling because when you had that opening shot and you see these candy wrappers on the control panels and all this, you just kind of get the feeling that this is a house in space.
well, yeah, that's Speedy. He's always stuffing food in his face, and he's constantly throwing wrappers on his control panel and stuff like that. And then Sharpie, who's always neat as a pin and well groomed and very efficient. And when you look at his panel, it looks, I mean, all of the lights are going in a very orderly fashion and stuff. I made sure that we set the blinks and stuff so that everything looked like it was doing something important. And you go over to Speedy's panel, and it's just going, it's just going nuts, and then nothing makes sense. Whatever's happening, none of it makes sense. So we wanted their personality to be reflected in their work.
So you directed the first episode, The Rift.
Some of it, I had a certain idea about certain things I wanted to have happen, but then I sat down with Bill Lutz, and he was talking to the actors, and I saw something magical happen between him and the cast. They all started clicking on a level that I couldn't seem to find. And I said, you know what, Bill? Do it. Do it. Take it, direct it. You need me, holler, and I might come in and say, I'd like to see a shot like this, and I'd like to see a shot like that. But you guys have a handle on this. So what we did was Bill ran with it because he had a way of invigorating the cast that I just couldn't seem to touch that nerve. But what I could do was get into their heads a little bit and talk to them about here's what's up with your character. And I could sit with Brian and them, and Brian could explain the characters, and I could tell them what I saw when I read it, and we could talk it out a bit. But when they needed that energetic push, when they needed to be fed, basically, Bill was the man to do that, and he did it beautifully. I mean,
Now,
he came with this raw energy, and it just lit everybody up, and so it worked really really well. So I just stepped back and kept an eye on things.
how long would you say it took to shoot the whole episode?
A week,
You shot all that in just a week?
yeah, we were doing
Wow.
on a slow day we were doing 8 pages,
Wow.
and our fastest day was 15 pages we blew out,
So
which is
get
unheard
all
of.
how did you get all your actors? Were they all from Vermont?
Well, I've worked with nearly all of them before.
Face
Spence, well, Spencer Lemon, Speedy. We met him through the 501st. And as we were beginning to cast the show itself, I mean, Jody pointed out. She goes, "Oh, that's Speedy right there. This guy, he's." I mean, he's basically playing himself, which is great. He's cast to type. And then Matt Stebbins, who plays Sharpie, I'd worked with him a bunch of times before. He directed me, and I directed him, and so it was just a given that he was going to be a part of this. And Sarah Mitiggy, she and I had worked on a couple shows before, and she's just lovely. So it was a no brainer to put her
Is
in the
she
show.
she from Vermont?
Yeah, yeah. And
It's always
then,
it's always nice to have your actors in the close
well, it's
by.
nice to have them local. I mean, I've got a stable of actors here, which is great to have. But then Rod Barnes, he came up out of New York, and he was friends with a fellow named Gary Karp, who I'd worked with a lot, and he also did sound. So he came up, he got our sounds all set up and running, and then he'd get on the set and play Smitty. And Josh Paliuka, who played our captain, Michael Bradley. Um, I'm trying to remember how he got brought aboard. I think,
Hmm.
Sarah knew him and brought him on board. Um, and he had a pretty commanding presence. He's a really tall guy. He's like next to me. He's like this damn tall, and I'm like 5'10" and a half. So I mean, he's a big dude. So he carried the role really well, and we've got some big plans for his character and Sarah's character going forward with Sweepers 2, Whitechapel, because what happens to them in their first episode has lasting and lingering effects.
Now let me ask you this: I enjoyed Sweepers. On a when you make these films, it's kind of almost a whole different experience when you watch somebody else's because you tend to
Mhm.
look at it on a technical kind of way. And one of the things I noticed about your first episode is that a lot of the times the sound seems to have been recorded to
Well,
where it's it's
What?
kind of and the music kind of drowns out some of the dialogue sometimes.
Well, that was the problem. Was Rod Barnes never got a chance to wrap up sound, and he became ill, and he fell off the radar for a while.
Oh,
And we were like, "What are we
so
going to do? What are we going to do?" And he had all the sound files and stuff, and we're going.
so were you
We,
use when you
so
put
we
the
said,
film together?
just put it out there. Just put it out there. Let's
So
just do
you
it.
were using basically just unprocessed sound. It hadn't
Yeah.
been.
Yeah,
Yeah. See what?
and then Bill Lutz he just dropped in sound effects and stuff and did what he could with what he had. Now down in Texas, got a fellow that goes by the handle Space Boy, and he writes all of his own music. So all of the music is original stuff that Space Boy wrote for us,
Hmm. So is
and
it the guy that recorded the sound? Is he okay now?
he's okay now.
Oh.
I was during the whole COVID thing. I mean, we didn't hear anything, and I thought, my God, Rod has died. I mean,
My God.
we're about ready to go. I think we've lost Rod because we didn't hear anything. We had no other way of getting a hold of him except through him, and he had fallen on some hard times, and he was trying to pull himself up by the bootstraps, and he wasn't well for a while, and but he never did catch COVID, interestingly, and he's getting his act back together now. He's lost a bunch of weight, which is a good thing. Always a good
Yeah.
thing.
Isn't
Drop a
it?
few pounds,
Yeah.
and
You and I know that all too well.
so now hopefully his jumpsuit will fit him. Um,
So let me ask you this, Jim. Do you have any plans to go back to the first episode and maybe process the sound and do a little tweaks
I'd
or
like to.
anything? Do you
I'd
think
like
you'll
to.
do that one day?
I'd like to think we'd do that at some point and do a director's cut maybe. I think Smitty's log entry is a little long. I'd like to whittle that down a little. There are some cuts that I think we could tighten the gaps a little bit. Um, just go over it one
You
more
know,
time.
one of the things that I liked about Sweepers is the fact that when you watch it, the characters are really easy to identify with because it seems like you've taken people just from today and put them in space, and
Yeah,
I think that is the best way you can present a group of people and want to and allow them to connect with the audience if they're just people we all know, and that's what
they're
I like
they're
about these characters. They're just
they're
people
human.
we know.
They're
Yeah,
human and they're flawed. Um, our aliens in Challenger are a little more inscrutable because we don't really get into their whole culture or anything right away. I like to, you got to save some mystery for some of these people. Our Keldarans are basically dark-haired, red-skinned Andorians, um, and they have kind of a Vulcan yet Romulan philosophy about life, but they're also psychomorphs. They have mental powers of a vast variety. So we've given people what we call endemic abilities. Our communications officer, Nee, she has the ability to absorb the static electricity out of the air. Think Frozone in The Incredibles and how he can draw the moisture out of the air, store it, and then use it for a cold blast or whatever. Well, with Nee Tomlin, she can pull the static electricity out of the air or out of your laptop or whatever, out of her control panel, and store it, and then use it to stun someone or to vaporize them or to create a field of some kind or a shield of some sort or to to use it like a cutting tool to cut through a bulkhead or there's a whatever we need to do. Her ability can be expanded to cover that. Whatever we need our Keldaran people to do, the redskin people, we'll use those psychic abilities to read minds or to telekinetically lift things and fly them through the air. So we leave some of these characters open to a huge bunch of abilities. Now Bill Lutz has a character. He's a little body dysmorphic. He's a great big guy and he's not comfortable in front of the camera. And I said, well, let's make you an alien and make your size not an issue because that's just how your people are.
Is that? I think I might have seen a picture of you putting makeup on him. The
And he
little
looks like
almost.
he looks like a whole bunch of little stones. He looks like the
Yeah,
Thing kind of, but with hair.
yeah.
And he's all gray. It's black and white and gray. And I want to do an episode where some of those start to fall off, like he begins to molt, and it freaks him out. He doesn't know what kind of a you know how teenagers start to get their first pimples and they're like, oh God, oh geez. Oh. I want him to go through that character. I want to do an episode where a shipment comes aboard the Challenger of a whole bunch of stuff, and one of the containers leaks, and it has some kind of psychotropic effect on all the humans on the ship, and they start to hallucinate and see all this crazy stuff. I want to see a scene where Captain Cage is sitting in her chair and she looks at the view screen, and this ladder comes up against the outside of the view screen. This guy climbs up with a spray bottle and a squeegee, and he just starts cleaning off the.
I think
And
she's
she's going
hallucinating. Yeah. So
just
let me
crazy
ask you,
stuff like
and
that.
we're gonna wrap up shortly. Your whole experience with sweepers. Uh, what would you say about the whole experience? Are you happy with it? Was it a
Oh, I'm
frustrating
thrilled. I'm
time
thrilled.
or
We had so much fun. We
good?
proved that you don't need a whole bunch of egos on set, and that if everyone would just play nice together, and it went really really well. We got great results. We used just about every bit of footage we shot. We didn't do a lot of takes. We do like 3 takes and go moving on. I think that's why we were able to get 8 to 15 pages a day, because we didn't spend too much time focusing on one thing. We would go, all right, we got that angle reset, and get the camera moved over here. All right, let's get the twos, let's get the threes, let's get the master, all of that stuff, and we'd get all of
Y-
that done, and then just move on to the next piece.
Yeah, you know, it almost seemed like each character's personality traits were just the actors. I mean, the people playing them. It seems
In
like you could easily believe that those people were the people that they weren't actors. That's just how they were.
well, it's about casting wisely. I think. I think it's about looking at people, and looking at your roles that you need to fill, and not giving your actors too much to do. I mean, I want to challenge our actors. Obviously, I put for Challenger. I put Jodie through hell. She her story is a PTSD story, and and Cage goes through some absolutely horrific crap that is going to haunt her character for her entire career. It's bad. It's bad what happens to her. And she gets pushed into a command that she's not ready for, and then sent on a deep space exploration mission that's going to send her far from home. And we get to watch her unravel, and we get to see how is her doctor and her XO gonna deal with this. Are they gonna get up under her and carry her along, or are they gonna lock her in the brig? I mean, what's gonna happen when her cheese finally slides off her cracker? We want to get to that point where it's collapse, and then we do recovery.
What can you tell us about episode 2? Uh, no
Uh,
spoilers, but
what of sweepers or
yes.
sweep? The second sweepers is called Whitechapel. The Audrey picks up a distress signal from a medical frigate, and it's a pre-recorded distress signal. It just repeats and repeats. And so they go to investigate, and as they're on their way there, they get a call from Admiral Sinclair, who says, "Don't go to that ship." Well, Michael Bradley isn't someone who leaves people behind, so he goes to the Whitechapel. Um,
I like that name.
but there's something going on with Michael Bradley that isn't quite right. He hasn't fully recovered from his experience in episode 1, and there are little fragments still left behind up here, and it's affecting him, and not in a good way. And the same thing for Lyra, having communed with Zal like she did. There are little bits of Zal in her mind. And so the two of them are going through this struggle for their own personality. So they go aboard the ship and they find just a scene of horror, and they discover that there's a new enemy in town.
Now, Whitechapel, is that the episode that I'm in?
No,
What was that? What that was
no,
going to be?
you're in the second Challenger episode, which is
Yeah.
almost entirely shot out, except for you, Joe Kresman, who was going to be the captain in Excalibur, and Ken Thompson from Saladin.
Hmm.
You three are going to you you come to help Captain Cage. She's being pursued by an enemy, and she needs help. And so what she does, she sets up basically a stinger's nest out ahead of her. She says, meet me at this coordinates, and she comes out of quantum and pops out in front of this battle formation. You guys are all set and waiting, and she skids into the formation, and here comes the bad guys. And the three of you have a conversation on her view screen. Well, I'll take point, and well, whatever she needs, and this kind of stuff. And then you guys surround the bad guy while she peels off to go back and rescue her guys that are trapped on a planet.
Will we see this?
Will we see it
Yes.
in glorious detail?
When do you think we will?
Well,
Yeah.
Michael, here's your ship.
Yeah. Okay, let's see it all. Yeah. Like
Here's
Marvel.
your ship.
What's the name of it?
I changed it from Valiant. I didn't want to. I mean, I was gonna go Valiant, but then I thought, no, let's change the names up. I'm trying to remember the Victory, I think, or something like that. I try to stay in the neighborhood. Um, but yeah, there are these corporate vessels. They're all the same. They're cookie cutter. The Challenger is like a new prototype vessel for deep
Well,
space exploration.
I'm looking very forward to it. And Whitechapel, looking very. I really can't wait to see where you take the Outer Rim after this first episode.
I hope we can take it somewhere. I mean,
When do you when
COVID really punched us in the gut. It really did it. It threw a wrench into everything. And
when do you
people are
think you'll
still
start shooting?
and people are still so scared. I'm saying and I just want to tell people, don't try not to be so scared. Don't let fear rule your life. Don't be afraid to get out there. It's look, if your number's up, and masks and shots in the arm don't appear to be making that much of a difference right now. So you might as well get out there and live your life. Don't be afraid to live.
When do you think
Yeah.
you'll start shooting?
I'm looking at February, March of next year. So
Hmm.
coming
Yeah,
up,
I might have to make a trip down to.
you might have to.
Yeah, I would
You
love to be involved in that.
well,
Well,
you
how's the weather in
you and
Vermont in
Miss you Miss
February?
you and Miss Spice need to come out anyway for fall and see
Yeah,
the beautiful colors. Come up here for
won't
the
you
colors.
in February? Won't you guys have snow?
February sometimes. The last few winters have been oddly mild.
Wow,
So,
because
yeah,
you usually get way more snow than us.
yeah, yeah, right up to our backsides typically.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that'll probably be
waist deep sometimes. Yeah,
that'll probably be the time you have all the snow. You
yeah.
know, one thing that we did not talk about, and we can talk about it briefly, is, and I don't remember the name of the episode, but it was a really, really nice short film you made, and that was the Gary Seven Roberta Lincoln
Boredom.
episode.
Boredom.
Yes,
Yeah.
I want to show that off on the channel because I don't think too many people
Go
have
grab
seen
it.
it.
Go grab it. Throw it up there. Go ahead.
But that is what timeline did that happen? I mean, when did you actually film that?
We shot that between. I think we shot that between Sweepers and Mother, or maybe we no, we might have shot that beforehand.
I think
Yeah,
that was
we
first.
before everything. It was right before everything fell apart. It was like in the spring.
You had actually planned on doing more of that, didn't you?
Oh yeah, we had a writer who had a whole story set up, and we were, and at the end of that episode, we were going to introduce Khan.
That was really cute. I really liked that.
We
That
we
was a
found a
lot of
way that we
fun.
could bring Khan into the story before he flew away.
Somehow I just can't picture Khan in a three-piece suit coming to work.
No,
No.
no, he's already. Well, the Botany Bay is already on, set and ready to launch, and it's just sitting there. But he's got other nefarious plans he wants to meddle in before he leaves.
You know
Um,
that's kind of like the unsung story. You never hear much about that little short story, and I think that's kind of like a gem of a story.
well,
No pun
we
intended.
wanted to bring all those characters in. We also wanted to bring in new characters that we hadn't seen before, create some more intrigue around what Gary Seven does exactly, and what kind of an agency does he work for. And so we're going to show the death of the first two agents that he came looking for, and show how they actually died down at Cape Canaveral in a car accident, and that there are two other agents Smith and Jones, and I got these two guys that are twins that were going to play these two very stoic, stern, almost never talk agents that are constantly 3 steps behind Gary all the time. They're trying to stop him for some reason. And Gary is always 3 steps ahead of these guys, and they're constantly tracking him, and they're constantly sniffing his trail, and they get closer, closer, closer. We're going to kind of, bring that all to a head at the end of our first season.
You need to do audiobooks because I could listen to you read the phone book and it sounds exciting.
Look at me redding up. Don't do that, man.
Yeah, I'm just sitting there like, wow, you just make it all so easy to see in your mind,
We
man.
had we had some juicy ideas for Gary Seven. We really did. I mean, we wanted to. In one of the scripts, we've got Roberta griping about how you've had me traveling all over time, all over the world. I missed Woodstock, for crying out loud. So what does he do at the end of this episode? It was like it was going to dovetail into the next episode. So it gives you this beautiful, and I've got the thing. I'm going to give it to my daughter if we don't end up using it. So I bought all these clothes for Roberta Lincoln, and they're in a bag somewhere, all folded up neat and stacked up and ready to go. All this stuff from the '70s that we found. There's this great shop in the town next to us. There's all this fantastic vintage clothes. So we got this great hippie jacket, a leather hippie jacket with all the fringe and stuff. Just beautiful, beautiful thing. And so he gives her that, and he says, "I'm going to send you on your own mission." And she's like, "You're kidding!" And he puts her in the safe, and he dials it up, and she steps out of a porta potty, and you hear Jimi Hendrix going, "Near, near, 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 near." It's like, oh my God, she's at Woodstock.
You
And
know, and that
the story was going to be that the brown acid that they were warning everyone not to take was actually a mind controlled drug that someone was trying to use to take over the kids' minds.
that would have actually been a series that would have been relatively easy to do in
Yeah.
terms of special
Oh heck
effects and
yeah.
all that stuff. That would have been. So I'm assuming the guidelines stopped that too.
Yeah, it did because it's
Yeah.
Star Trek. It's part of Star Trek.
Who was the actress? How did you find the actress to play Roberta Lincoln? Because she was really good.
That's Lyra Gonzalez, my friend. That's the same woman that's in Sweepers. That's
That was
that's
her.
that's Sarah Mitige. Yeah,
Oh wow! I
she's
had
good.
never. That just goes to show you. I took both of those people as two separate people.
Now the Cube voice, that was Jody. I
Wow.
I ran her voice through Audacity like you wouldn't believe, and pitched her way up and added all kinds of wetness to her voice. And meaning I'm bubbly and weird. So
She, the actress was really good in that. She was really charming.
she
She
was.
pulled it off.
That's just Sarah being Sarah. She's perfect.
So
And,
where are you on Whitechapel? Do you have a full script already?
oh yeah, yeah. I want to see a few tweaks done to it, just so we can get there's a few things I want to do about how we use our sets that would require a little rewriting, a little bit. Um, and I'm it's boring, you know, procedural stuff as far as sets and scripts go. So I'm not going to bore your viewers with that, but there it needs a few little tweaks just to accommodate our technical needs. But other than that, it's a good script. It's creepy as hell, um,
Well, I
and
can't wait to see it.
and it means we get to build some really spooky sets with a lot of dangling wires and conduits and dark and shadows and red lights flashing and, and that kind of stuff going on all over the place. So yeah, it's going to be fun to shoot. It's it
Can't.
we get to build a fun house for this one.
One last thing in the anthology scene that we posted on the page, the scene where the bridge module floats away. Who came up with that? Yeah, I thought that was a Jim thing. Was that something that had been maybe hinted on or conceived in previous
Well,
Star Trek? Or was that something totally new?
at first I had this idea where I thought it would be neat where these little walls slide out from under the command seat and make a little pod around the
Uh,
seat so that just the captain can punch out. But a few people rightly pointed out, that'll hurt morale knowing that the
yeah,
captain
here you
can
go.
punch out when things get
You
dicey.
got
Right?
yeah. You guys are on your own. See you later.
I'm out of here. So they were like, no. And I said, well, all right. Well, what if we can separate? Everything is modular on these ships. What if the bridge can punch out? The whole bridge and the whole command team can go. And they're like, well, that's better. If everyone else has taken a life pod and gotten out of Dodge, then yeah, the bridge would carry all of the most vital information and stuff. So
Well, I guess some people might say, well, why not just separate the saucer and take everybody?
saucer was too damaged.
Uh, Plan B.
Yeah. Take the least damaged part of the ship and fly.
Yeah.
But we're
Well,
doing
Jim.
we're doing the same thing with this ship over here. So
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. You've wow, you have broadened my horizon.
well, and on a personal note, you and I don't get to talk often enough. We need to do this more.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
and
really
not
do.
just the podcast, but
Yeah,
we
you're
need to
you're
just
just
get together and
a
rap on occasion.
you're just a tremendous person. And for those of you who don't know, Jim actually created you might not even remember, but you created the Valiant insignia. You remember that?
Yeah, I guess I did, didn't I?
Yep, you created the insignia. And
Well, I
you
remember I
also
threw a bunch of designs at you and said, "Here, pick one."
yeah, yeah,
So
you created them. I don't remember the other ones. All I remember is that one we used.
yeah,
But you did that. Jim's always been there, for questions. He's always been willing to help. And, you created the phaser, what do you call it? Just a cannon? What is the official name for that?
it's
Is there an official name?
it's like a mortar, kind of. They never really gave it a name. They just broke
Yeah.
it out of the case and used it, but they never really called it anything. And they only used it in arena.
One episode, just like the
Yeah.
phaser rifle.
So I
One
was thrilled.
episode.
I was thrilled to make that for you and to see it broken out and used. Animals was a really good episode, and I did not. I honestly did not see that ending coming, and I went, "Oh,
Well, that was just
damn,
our way of saying everybody's
damn,
not bad.
damn."
And
That's
that's
where
funny.
well, the actor you had for that role. He owned it, and
Well,
and
Jim, I've taken a little bit of slack from people who, you know, oh, Starfleet wouldn't act like that. You know, that guy is unbelievable, and it's like that.
There
It's
have
just
been there have been bigoted characters before.
yeah, and plus it is a kind of an exaggerated story for people today. To there's people like that. So,
Oh no, I got it. I
but
got it.
when we were shooting
Your
that, and
message came through loud and clear, and it was a good one. And it was
you
a
did
good one.
that cannon. You did that cannon, and I would tell Brady, leave that cannon in the shot. Can you keep that cannon in the shot? Because Jim did that. Let's keep it in the shot. But Jim,
One,
you've always been willing to help. You've always been a really good friend, and I miss you. I love you. You and Jody are great,
I'm back at you,
and
brother.
you're just you and her are just, man. I just think about you too, and I just feel warm inside because you're just so good people. And
Well,
yeah,
we need to get you to come up this way and visit at some
yeah.
point.
When you have a solid date for when you're going to do the shoot, let me know, and I'd like to make the trek to help out.
See what you did there.
But thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
me tonight.
Thanks
And
for letting me prattle on.
oh yeah, these podcasts can easily just go keep going.
Oh yeah, we could do 2 hours easy.
Easily.
We got so
But
much to talk about.
you're an hour ahead, so you're at about what?
I'm a night owl. When we're done here, I'm going to go down to my shop and do some cleaning because it looks like right now it looks like Home Depot and Hobby Lobby had a baby and it exploded. It's horrible down there. So I
Yeah.
need to clean up. It's awful.
I would love to see that one of these days. I bet you there's a lot of things in there I just would love.
I have a slew of phaser rifles that I made. So
Okay, don't tell me that. And speaking of phaser rifles, the one we had, I was yeah, that's
these are pew pew guns for Outer Rim.
yeah. We never seen their guns in the first episode, but
Nope, no reason to.
we're gonna
Oh,
get to it.
you'll see them. You'll get to see them in Mother because Challenger does come to the rescue.
So, and speaking of Whitechapel, I'm assuming is that the episode that Craig's helping you out on, or is it Challenger he's helping you out on?
Yes, all of
Both.
the above, the whole thing. Yeah,
Craig's
I
a wonder. He's a wonderful guy.
oh,
He's a
Craig's a
great guy.
great guy. He and I must have talked
He's
for 2 hours on the phone.
yeah. He's
We hit it off right away. He's a good guy, and we,
that's another guy who I can just talk to forever.
dude, and he is so thrilled. He loves all the models that we built, and he can hardly wait to tear into it and start creating them in the computer. He sent me some preliminary stuff of our little shuttle, and dude,
Yeah, yeah.
you
It
God bless you, sir, for sending that man to me because
yeah. It's
he is
like
going to
Craig.
bring it. I can tell it's going to be.
Craig,
We
I need
finally have a CGI guy that doesn't have an attitude, and he's thrilled to be a part of what we're doing, and I couldn't be
yeah.
happier. So
It's like you ask for an inch with Craig and you get a mile. I mean, the guy is
I
just.
see that right away.
I Craig, give me a shot of a shuttle. He'll send you 5 pages of different angles of the shuttle. That's how detailed he is.
Well, that's how much fun he's having, and that's the thing. He's
Yeah.
another one of those people that you bring in and you say, "Just have fun," and they go, "Okay," and then they
Eh,
do.
Well,
And
and one of the things too about your films is that it'll give him a chance away from Star Trek related. So I think he's going to really enjoy doing something that isn't just the
well,
norm, Star
yeah,
Trek.
and that
And
was and he immediately copped the right attitude. I knew I found my guy when I said it's this simple, Craig. Don't think about Star Trek. You get to create things from scratch. I mean, I do need copies. I need computerized copies of all these models that we intend to do beauty shots of, but I need CG for for the more acrobatic movements that these ships do. I don't have a motion control system for my cameras like ILM has. You know, I have to very gently hand by the ship
yeah,
like this, and not wiggle it, I can't have this nonsense going on.
unless you're under attack.
Well, in that case, a little jolt is fine. But so it's all about sliders and dollies and stuff like that. Luckily, we've got a public access station that lets us go in and book time with the studio for no charge because
Nice,
when we're done, they get all our content and they get to air it. So
nice. That's
Yeah.
really nice.
So Sweepers has been on television.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that on television, but oh well, I guess you couldn't see it from here.
Cast it to your living room TV.
Yeah, that's true.
You can you pull it up on YouTube. You want the Outer Rim, Sweepers. The episode's called Rift, and then cast it to your TV. It's shot in 1080p. It looks pretty darn good.
Technology.
Yeah.
Well, thanks,
Now, if I
Jim.
can, now I've got a guy I'm looking at now who did some cinematography for James, and I'm going to back him into a corner and go. I want you to bring your big red up here to
Oh
Vermont
wow.
and shoot us in 4K. Can you do that? See if he can come up for this next shoot. That would be pretty sweet. And I got Bill Lutz going, but I said, no, I'm going to chain you to him, and so you can learn. And
Did
he
Bill
said,
shoot your
oh,
first
okay, all right,
episode?
huh?
Bill shoot the first episode?
Yeah, he and I together. He and
Oh,
I together.
oh cool.
We shared directorial and cinematography, DP kind of stuff. We just kept changing back and forth. He'd get behind the camera, then I'd get behind the camera. A couple of times Brian got behind the camera. I'm just, I'm about doing workman things. Just everyone get in there, roll up your sleeves, and try something.
Well, you got it done.
Yeah, and that's how we. Hey, we'll get you behind and in front of the camera.
And that's how
We'll
it
have you
needs to
hold the
be.
boom a few times, or maybe
That's how it
put a
needs to
lick of
be.
paint on things.
I mean, if you can make a date, shoot all your stuff that date, that just makes it so much easier
And the
and
way,
less expensive.
well, Brian Kovalt's our first AD, and his scheduling skills are off the charts good. We end up with an extra day at the end every time.
Wow.
An extra day. We go, "Ooh, do we have any pickups we can get today, or do we just clean up and put everything away? Let's clean up and put everything away. We're good. We've shot out all we can shot. Let's just, have a nice leisurely pack up day.
Cool.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Because usually in fan films, you're shooting up until the very end of the day.
Oh, listen, I've got pickups I've got to get of Ethan for the second episode of Challenger. I've got one shot that I've got to get of Jody where she rolls up on a dirt bike and gets off, takes off her helmet and reveals that it's her doing all this crazy stuff on a dirt bike. Um, we weren't able to get that shot because we did a lot of drone photography that day, and our drone guy stuck both his drones in a tree.
Oh, wow.
So we spent the rest of the day trying to get his drones down out of the tree and completely forgot to get that shot. So, and that was 2.5 years ago.
Oh, well, you know what they say, better late than never.
I know, but Jody's like, I'm 3 years older now, and I don't look like I did that. I said, we'll
We'll
figure it
fix
out.
it in post. We'll fix it in post.
Makeup. They've got these little things they can stick and pull your skin back and tighten things up. They're little lifts. They use them to make actors look younger in flashback scenes. We'll use those.
We'll fix it in post.
Well, Cage's hair is already salt and pepper, so that
Yep.
was on purpose. That was on purpose because she's
Tell her,
been through that much hell. Her hair went white.
tell her she's always beautiful.
Oh, no matter what, she could bald headed. She's still gorgeous. Yeah.
Yep. Then she can
Yep.
play a Delton. Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it very much. We must do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm game.
Okay. Well, take care of yourself.
You too.
Take care of Jody. Take care of the kids
You got it.
and the dog.
Two dogs. Two dogs. Well, no, now three dogs. My mother-in-law has come to live with us, and she's got a little Maltese.
Oh, I only seen the one dog in the cooking video, so I didn't see
I
the other
know.
one.
Well, we've got Jake, the golden retriever. We've got Ursa Maru, which is the name of the ship in Mother, by the way. We've got Ursa Maru, and she's a Landseer Newfoundland, the black and white kind of Newfoundland. And then we've got Charlie, the little Maltese. And Charlie and Ursa Maru have a love affair going on. They chase each other all around the house, and it's the funniest damn thing you've ever seen. This giant Newfoundland chasing this little Maltese around. It's hysterically funny. So there's no end of entertainment in my home. It's insane here.
Never a dull moment.
So yeah. This is dog heaven now here. We love our
Oh,
pups.
they're
We
pretty
do.
quiet. Haven't heard them.
They're sleeping right now.
Oh, wow.
So sleeping. Yeah, they're sleeping.
All three of them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.